Shalom. Before I begin, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, HaKakwadash, and the bonus to the apostles and elders, great millstone. And shalom to the I keep teaching his word throughout the four corners in true sincerity. I'm back with another lesson through the strength by Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua. But we're going to be edifying us to the elect of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua. And the topic of this lesson is going to signs in the heaven. Alright, because as you can see, this past week, there's been major signs, that's been happening. Solar eclipse that happened August 12th, and then you had a meteor shower, that happened, recently. Okay, so the Lord is showing major signs, in the heavens. Okay. Major signs, in the heaven. I got a video here.
We didn't have to go far, Eric.
Come on, man.
We didn't have to go far, Eric and Annalise. We saw it live right here on Local 10 News just about 10 minutes ago during Syra's traffic report.
Oh, that's great.
We rolled on it, and actually we have to thank our director.
Oh, look at that.
Look.
Wow.
Darby was actually the one that pointed it out because we were all on TV and we needed to have somebody basically watching our show, but we were on TV, so I know. Good job, Darby. Major high five to him. And so we saw it live right here on Local 10 News. So if you're watching, our editors did a great job zooming in. Isn't that beautiful?
Funny.
I mean, there's only moments like this that are captured every once in a while, and I'm so glad I got to share it with all of you guys.
Alright, so again, signs in the heavens. We know that those signs in the heaven are not just it's not just a show to watch. These are a warning and signs from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua of what things to come to pass. Prophecy. Okay, we're not dismayed at the signs of heaven. It says the total eclipse took place on August 12th, making Europe's first total solar eclipse in 27 years. Such a rare occurrence. But when we see these things again, we're not dismayed at them. Like the scriptures say. Jeremiah 10 and start at 1, it says, "Hear ye the word which the Lord Yahweh speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for this heathen are dismayed at them." Alright. Let me get that. It means to be shattered, be broken, be afraid, right? To be dismayed, terrified. Discouraged, scared, terrified, go down by violence. It's confusion and fear. And we're not dismayed at these signs because, again, we know prophecy. Okay, we know that the Yahushua is going to return and set up a righteous kingdom in the earth. Before he does these things, there are going to be different signs, not only signs in the heaven, but wars and rumors of wars, pestilences. You have an earthquake. You just had an earthquake. Alright. Look at it, August 10th, August 5th. Not today. Yeah, today. Look, earthquake, 6.9, meter earthquake, These things are happening, recent. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 earthquakes yesterday. 1 this morning. Alright. These are no more occurrence. You see at least 38 dead after an Indonesia magnitude 7.7 earthquake. Alright. Judgment from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. Look, 5.2 magnitude earthquake strikes southern Spain. Powerful earthquake rocks Spain. Again, signs, all right? The Lord is working in the earth. Okay? Matthew 24. Matthew 24 and starting at 3 says, it says, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So when you see these different signs, all right, these are the signs of the return of Yahushua. All right, because disciples, they were looking for and hastening the coming of the day of the Lord. All right, they were, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. All right, they wanted to see a change in the earth. And they know that change is only going to happen, all right, once Yahushua returns and sets up his kingdom. All right, because during that time, what the Romans was ruling, Edomites. All right, now you have what? Edomites now are ruling. Okay, it says, and Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and shall deceive many. All right, a lot of different false, saviors. All right, there's false prophets in the earth deceiving our people. That's a sign as well, and there are many of them. All right, more than ever. All right, especially with these churches. Okay, it says, and you shall hear of wars, rumors of wars. All right, you have, Russia. All right, Ukraine. You have America. All right, you got Iran. All right, major about Israel, Iran. All right, America. All right, see that you be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. All right, it's not yet. All right, pay attention to the word yet. Okay, and when we see these things, we're not troubled. We're not worried. All right, because even though we in a time of war and prices of gas is going up, we're not worried. Okay, because we know it's a necessary evil. Right, it really is not evil; it's a good. All right, but it says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences, right, and earthquakes in diverse places. In diverse places, earthquakes. Okay, I just read it. Okay, right. These are things that we have to watch for. All right, if you say you want the Lord to return, all right, you say you seek the day of the Lord, you're supposed to be watching, what's going on. And us as the prophets, we're supposed to be watching these things and, bringing them out, right? And bringing them out. Because all these are the beginning of sorrows, and they're only going to get worse. All right, the pestilences go get worse, famines go get worse, earthquakes go get worse. All right, till that time, right? But I wanted to get Genesis 1 and 14. It says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. All right, you have the sun and the moon. It says, and let them be. Let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. Right, signs. You had a meteor shower and a solar eclipse in the same week, and you have multiple earthquakes back to back to back to back. All right, that's the Lord, man. That's the Lord. Let's see how about Shemal Shai. All right, we are at high time. All right, this ain't, again, the day of the Lord is coming as a thief in the night. All right, we got to be ready, because these people sure ain't ready. But we definitely got to be ready, because we know. She'll say, well, your conversation is supposed to be wholly separate from what? All right, those that's committing wickedness, those that's doing iniquity. All right, Acts chapter 2 and 17, it says, and it shall come to pass in the last days, saith the Most High, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Right, you have, different people seeing visions and dreams of the return of Yahushua, seeing the visions of the end, people killing each other. All right, seeing the chariots, or people having dreams of the mark of the beast. All these things are, again, signs the Lord is pouring out His Spirit upon the earth. It says, and on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in heaven above And then signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapors of smoke. Right? He says he goes show wonders in heaven above, meteor showers, solar eclipses. And in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapors of smoke. You had what? These wildfires. You had, 2 months ago, you had those wildfires here in Miami. Okay. It says the sun shall be turned into darkness with the solar eclipse, and the moon into blood, before that great and notable day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Right, but it's talking about Israelites. All right. Because who did the Lord come for? The lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right. This is subject to the nation of Israel, which are the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. Not, those in the land that you see today. All right. Even those that you see here in America. There may be Israelites over there. Well, there are Israelites there in Israel, but for the mass majority, those that are in power are like BB. All right, those the true people. That's you see with the Goldilocks hairstyle and the small hats. I'm talking about them. All right, because again we're scattered. All right, but these things that we see upon the earth are going to happen before the day of the Lord. And people just ignoring it like it's, it's like, oh, this, wow. Like it's a spectacle. Like, oh my gosh, like, wow. This ain't happened in such a long time. Wow, like it's just a random occurrence is happening in the earth. All right, judgment is, about to get, brought forth. Okay, don't forget about that pale horse. All right. But with that alone is lesson was edifying. I want to give our praises to Yahweh Bashim, Shah Bashim, Rakakwadash, and the bond to the apostles, elders, millstone, and Shalom.